Okay, I'm going to start this morning by just officially welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Sawadee krab. Today's class is part of our group learning program where each Sunday I get together with students and help you guys to understand the path to enlightenment and developing a foundation in the path to enlightenment. We start with meditation, but then afterwards I move into a topic of discussion, and we use this book series, the first book of the book series, to be the guide for this program. It's a 7-month program where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter by chapter, and you can attend here at the temple, or there's also people who are joining us online as well. So welcome to all of you guys. You can join through the live stream at either 9 a.m. like this or 9 p.m. on Sunday. So depending on where you live in the world, there should be a live class for you either Saturday evening or Sunday morning, even Sunday evening, and so forth. You can learn these teachings gradually, whether you're here in Thailand or whether you're somewhere else. And it's all recorded. So even if you can't make the live class, you can watch the YouTube video or Facebook. You can listen to the podcast. There's all kinds of options for you to be able to learn and grow and develop and move the mind to this enlightened mental state. What enlightenment is where the mind's peaceful and joyful. The mind no longer experiences any discontent feeling. So by the time you get to enlightenment, there is no anger or sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment. All of these feelings have been eliminated through eliminating the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings in the mind. So meditation is an important practice, but you would need more than just meditation in order to get to enlightenment. One of the biggest myths of the life story of the Buddha is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. He did meditate, of course, but there was much more that he needed to teach in order to help people get to this enlightened mental state. So I'll help you guys to understand this as we get going in our class today, because today's topic is chapter 11 of our book, which is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. So not only are we going to do meditation, which we do in each individual class when we get started, but today's topic is actually about meditation as well. So I'm going to teach you guys 4 different meditations that the Buddha taught. I'm going to explain to you the reason why these meditations are used, but just understand that there's a lot other teachings that you would need besides just meditation to be able to actually get to enlightenment. There's a core central teaching that he taught called the Eightfold Path, and I've already taught that as part of this group learning program, and I teach it many times as we go throughout the year in the various courses and retreats that I share. And you guys are always welcome to learn these in upcoming classes, or you can even look at the recordings or the book or audiobooks. All these things are available to you at no cost. So again, welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online, whether you're joining us for the first time or you're joining regularly. Nice that all of you guys have decided that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. I'm going to guide you in meditation, and the way that I start with meditation is I start with some chanting. This chanting just kind of eases us into meditation. It helps you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you would like to see the chants, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You can get a copy of it if you like. You can even chant along if you'd like. You'll see the Pali language there, and you'll see the English translations as well. If you look at these chants, there's a lot of gratitude and appreciation and respect for the Buddha in these chants. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants. They were probably created either by his students during his life or by his students after he died. That if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, and this teacher didn't want anything from you, they didn't ask anything of you, you would probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So a Buddha doesn't walk around and say, here, chant these things to me, right? They would have eliminated their arrogance and ego, and that would be arrogance and ego to try to convince people to chant things to you. So I'm sure the Buddha didn't actually create these chants. During his life, he did do chanting, but the reason why he taught chanting is that everything he taught was oral. There weren't books back then, that the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to that region of the world yet. So everything he taught was oral. So every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word in order to commit them to their memory so they could actually practice them. So there isn't anything mystical or magical about chanting. Nowadays, we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory, but I still chant because I have a lot of admiration and gratitude and respect for the Buddha, and it does help to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you guys would like to chant along, you're welcome to. You hear me chanting. And just know that this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. Like I mentioned, it's just during the lifetime of the Buddha to commit the teachings to memory. That's the only reason why they chanted. And nowadays, you don't actually need to chant in order to get to enlightenment. But during his life, you needed to as a way to commit the teachings to memory. But today we have books, we have podcasts and videos and audiobooks and all kinds of ways to capture the teachings and preserve them. We don't need to chant, but it does help you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Once we're in the meditation, I'll provide you some guidance. You'll hear me kind of talking and kind of guiding you as we're actually meditating together and kind of instructing you in the meditation. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just meditating together. I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear some birds chirping or dog barking. You might hear a car going by, but all these sounds are impermanent, right? It's not possible for you to be in an environment where there's permanent quietness. This isn't actually possible. So you're going to hear occasional sounds when you meditate, but you can bring your mind back to the breath and you can choose not to be annoyed, right? If you desire for things to be quiet, when you hear a sound, you'll be annoyed or you'll be frustrated. But this is the mind itself causing these feelings. You can train your mind to let that go and not crave permanent silence. So after we meditate for a period of time, then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. The same exact chants that we go into meditation with, we'll come out of the meditation with those as well. In terms of the body positioning for meditation, there's actually 4 positions that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. When you're first learning, it's typical to learn in the seated position. This is very common, either on the floor or on a chair. Some people at home, you might be on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit wherever you're comfortable. But let me just give you some guidance on sitting. Again, you can sit however you like. Everybody's body is a little bit different, so it's not about everybody sitting in exactly the same position. But for those of you guys that would like some guidance on sitting, usually if you're on the floor, you have a cushion or so under your rear. You usually lightly cross your legs. If you have them real tight, this will impede the circulation and you could experience pain in the lower body. So you like your legs to just be lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. What that does is it helps to get the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So it allows the circulation to flow in the lower body. So if you like to do that, feel free to do that if that's what makes you feel comfortable. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. So there's other options here. You could put your palms on your thighs or on your knees. You could put your palms up. Some people like to just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So whatever's comfortable for you, you find whatever works best. So again, the Buddha put his hands right over left, but this isn't required. You can sit however is comfortable for you because everybody has a different body. Different people are going to find different things to be comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train the mind. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. And it also helps you to breathe easily through the nose, filling up the lungs, and then kind of breathing in and out of the lungs that way. So again, I'm going to start with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join along. And then afterwards, I'll come back with some guidance on the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranang Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมากวาพุทธังมหากวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys that are here. Welcome to everyone online. Welcome to all of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. For those of you guys that you're here for the first time, I'd like to just let you know that there's a bathroom in the very back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to use that at any time. There's bathrooms outside the classroom too. If you go out to the main temple complex, you'll see signs that take you around to the main bathrooms. So you're welcome to use those as well. We even have water and snacks and juice and things like this that are provided by our students. So you're welcome to even help yourself to any snacks and water and juice and things that are like that over there on the table. So as I mentioned, after our meditation, I share some teachings with you that are going to help you on your journey to enlightenment. If you'd like to learn the foundational teachings that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment, you have plenty of opportunities to do that, whether it's certain courses or classes or retreats that I share, certain books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. Each Sunday we get together here and I share a topic from our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the very first book of the book series. And you can acquire that book through downloading it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if you have access to Amazon in your country. Today's topic is chapter 11, which is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of the various meditations that the Buddha taught, because there's countless meditations that you'll see in the world, but there's only 4 that the Buddha actually taught. And when you understand these 4 and you get really good at them, this is what's going to help you to train your mind, because getting to enlightenment is a purification of the mind. You're training your mind to uproot the causes and conditions that are producing anger and sadness and frustration depression, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. By the time you get to enlightenment, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are at ease. They're really blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. You'll notice that your mind is focused, concentrated. You have clarity of mind and deep memory. You're not even in a bad mood anymore. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's impossible for you to experience a bad mood because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it. And meditation is one of the things you would need in order to accomplish that, but it's not the only thing that you would need. There's other teachings as well. The teachings of the Buddha are assembled in 45 large volumes. They're about this thick. We refer to it as the Pali Canon. He taught for 45 years, from the age of 35 to the age of 80. And during this time frame, he taught much more than just meditation. So if it was only meditation that you needed to be able to get to enlightenment, he would have just taught meditation and that's it. But instead, he taught a lot of things that you need. So while today's topic is about meditation, it's important that you understand there's much more than meditation that you would actually need to learn and grow and develop in order to train your mind to move to this enlightened mental state. So the teachings of the Buddha, it's not a bunch of beliefs. It's not things that you're believing and hoping something good happens when you die. It's not about rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. If you see those things that are being attributed to the Buddha and his teachings, the Buddha never taught any rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. He also didn't teach rules and commandments. He didn't teach you the way the world should be, and that if everybody follows these rules, then the world will become a peaceful place. Instead, he taught you the way the world is. What you're doing is you're learning and growing and developing about learning the natural laws of existence, understanding how the world is. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. The anger and the sadness and the worry and the stress and the anxiety, that's your mind just having a lack of wisdom that hasn't been trained in order to understand the world that you live in. And when you don't understand natural laws, you will struggle and you will have difficulties. Just like with the natural law of gravity, we all struggled when we were growing up because we lacked wisdom of this natural law. We fell down, we hit our head, we broke open our knees, we broke toys. We had all kinds of difficulties with this natural law of gravity because we didn't understand it. We had a lack of wisdom. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law, and now we make wiser decisions. We tie our shoes tighter. We look at the surface of the street. We stop being so giddy and bouncing around, so excited like a little kid all the time. And now we experience improved results, that we don't fall down and we don't hurt ourselves the way that we used to when we were children, because we awoke to the wisdom of this natural law. And then naturally, we started making wiser decisions that produced wholesome results for us, or wholesome karma. You might have heard the word karma being used. The word karma is from the Sanskrit language, where the original teachings of the Buddha are in Pali. So people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use the word karma. This is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. That when you make a wise decision, it's going to produce a wholesome result, or wholesome karma. When you make an unwise decision, it's going to produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma. Oftentimes when we're experiencing unwholesome things in our life, we might look around and try to blame somebody else for what we're experiencing. The teachings of the Buddha, it's not about blame or fault. It's about understanding wise decision making and then making wise decisions that produce wholesome results in your life. But you would have a very hard time practicing wise decision-making or discernment if you didn't have the wisdom of the natural laws. So this is why the Buddha taught you about the natural laws, so that you could gradually awaken to this wisdom through learning them, investigating them, examining them, through reflecting on them to independently verify them, and through practicing them. And as you're integrating the teachings into your life, you'll notice that the mind's becoming more peaceful, more calm, serene, content with joy, to the point where ultimately the mind is enlightened and you'll never experience any discontent feelings any longer, because you know the situations where you're angry and sad and frustrated or annoyed or other things like this. And when you're training your mind in these teachings and you notice that you're in those same exact situations and your mind's not frustrated, you're not annoyed, you're not agitated, you're not stressed or having anxiety, you'll know it's these teachings that led you to that point. So meditation is important, and I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of this, but just understand that there's a lot more that you would need to learn besides just meditation. As we go in our class today, you can ask any and all questions that you like. those of you guys here at the temple, if you would like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl here. If you could just get a microphone and press the gray button on the front, you'll see the lights come on, and you can hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. And they'll be able to hear you online too, because we have plenty of people joining us online. They wouldn't be able to hear you if you didn't use a microphone. And you can take these microphones back to your seat, because you might have more than one question, or the people around you might have a question, so you can just share the microphone around. And for those of you guys online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your questions into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. And in Zoom, you have the added functionality of electronically raising your hand, and then you can open up your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and we'll be able to hear you through the live stream as well. So as we go, feel free to ask any and all questions that you like. So just to get us started with understanding meditation, let's start with some very basics, right? So oftentimes different people think different ways about meditation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my definition and my understanding of meditation. Whether you agree with this or not is up to you, but it at least help you to understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about meditation. What meditation is a technique to actively train the mind in a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're either eliminating certain unwholesome qualities of the mind, or you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you're doing this either in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. So it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session, eliminating certain unwholesome qualities, cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind, and you're doing it in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. This is what meditation is. Just as important as it is to understand what meditation is, it's also important to understand what meditation isn't. Meditation isn't going for a drive or walking the dog or gardening or exercising. Sometimes people might say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to go to do some gardening and meditate, or I'm going to go for a drive and meditate. Well, if what I teach you, if you just went out for a drive, you wouldn't be able to see enlightenment through that. So what people might be saying is, hey, I'm going to go to try to calm my mind down and go for a drive or go do some gardening. That might be what they're saying, but it's not the type of meditation that the Buddha taught. So oftentimes in modern language, people will say things and do things that they might think is in line with the teachings of the Buddha. But if you haven't learned the original teachings of the Buddha, you might be confused about what is meditation. And sometimes you might hear people say that they're going to go walk the dog and meditate. Now, while these things might be very enjoyable, might be very helpful for an individual in their life, and if you would like to do those things, feel free to do those things. That's up to you. Whatever you choose to do in your life is up to you. But just understand that when you are doing those things, you're not actually meditating, because you're going to hear me talk about a certain length of time to meditate and a certain frequency. And if, like I mentioned, if you just went out and walked the dog thinking you were meditating and that's all you were doing, and you weren't doing what I'm going to be describing to you, you wouldn't be able to see the improvement to the condition of your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So these things aren't meditation, but surely they could be something that you enjoy doing and you might choose to do as part of your life. As you're growing and you're developing on the path to enlightenment and you're learning meditation, it's important to have a meditation teacher. There's only one type of individual that would ever be able to get to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers, and this would be a Buddha. What a Buddha is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. This is one of the first criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. Then they're going to dedicate the rest of their life, having gotten to enlightenment, they will dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three main criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment. And then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So while you can get to enlightenment, and at that point your mind would be fully enlightened, you would be experiencing the enlightened mental state, you wouldn't be a Buddha at that point. A Buddha is very rare and very unique in the world. Sometimes people will tell you that everybody is a Buddha. No, you're not a Buddha. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha said that it's very rare for a Buddha to be in the world. The last one that the world currently is aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need a teacher, because as you're meditating and you're awakening your mind, you're going to have certain questions. You're going to need help and clarification. And you're going to need to reach out to somebody and talk to somebody and get help. You wouldn't be able to ask questions to a book. right? So you can read a book, but if you just went off and tried to meditate on your own, you might run into various challenges or various complications and struggles. So having a relationship with somebody that you can reach out to is really important. If you would like to reach out to me at any point, you're always welcome to do that. Even if I don't hear from you for 6 months, a year, 10 years, you're always welcome to reach out to me and ask me for help, and I will help you. You can ask questions in these classes that I teach, either online or in person. You can post on our Facebook group and I'll answer your questions there. You can send me private messages. You can even schedule personal guidance, either here in Chiang Mai or even online. There's a way that you can schedule an appointment and we'll meet in Zoom one-on-one, and I can help you that way. There's an individual who at one time contacted me who didn't have a teacher, and I'll tell you this story so that you'll understand how important it is to have a teacher. There's an individual who one time, he's a doctor, and he was trying to meditate and awaken his mind on his own. He didn't realize he needed a teacher, and he was doing this for about 2 years. He was reading books, watching YouTube videos, things like this, and he got into all kinds of difficulties with his mind. He got to the point where he was sleeping 23 hours a day. He couldn't go to work. He was having suicidal thoughts. He was very depressed. And this is because he didn't understand what he needed to do in order to awaken the mind. He couldn't even work as a doctor anymore. His relationship with his fiance was falling apart. And for one reason or another, he decided to reach out, and he found me and he got help. He ended up coming here to Thailand, and I helped him for a period of time, and he went back to his home country, and I helped him from there as well. And ultimately today, he's doing just fine. He's back to work. He did lose his relationship with his fiance, but for a 6-year period, his mind was having a lot of difficulties, and he was really struggling. And like I mentioned, he was even contemplating suicide. Now, I don't suspect that will ever happen to you. It's not because of meditation that occurred. It's because he was trying to learn and grow and develop and awaken his mind without the help of a teacher or any guides. And an individual can't do that unless you're an actual Buddha. And this is very rare in the world. So you're going to need teachers and guides to be able to help you. So feel free to use me as a teacher if you'd like to reach out and get help, because as you're meditating and you're training your mind, you're learning with all the resources that I share. If you reach out and you say, hey, David, I'm experiencing this, and if what you get back from me is, hey, that's normal, keep going, that's exactly what you would be experiencing, you'll feel confident. You'll feel like, hey, I'm headed in the right direction. But if you're not quite sure and you don't have the guidance that you need, you can end up having difficulties and struggles like this gentleman did and had a very challenging time in his life. So again, it's not meditation that produced that. The cause of that is that this individual didn't have a teacher, and you need a teacher and guides to be able to help you on the path. So as long as you have a teacher, you'll be able to get the help that you need, and you won't run into those kinds of challenges. Then in terms of meditation positions, as part of the meditation basics, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And the reason why he taught these is because your body can't be in the same position all the time. It's not possible. Where if you were just in the seated position all the time, there's going to be situations where you can't do that. For example, in 2019, I got in a motorbike accident. I couldn't sit. All I could do was lay because my leg was banged up, right? I couldn't sit cross-leg. All I could do is lay in a hospital bed with an IV hooked up to me. So you're going to be interested in cultivating a meditation practice where you can meditate anywhere, anytime. And your body is not going to be able to permanently sit in any one particular position or be in any one particular position. So there's these 4 positions that we teach. And you might use these different positions at different times for different reasons. I'll explain to you how I use these positions, and then you don't believe what I'm sharing with you, but instead you learn it and then you implement it into your life and see how it works for you. So the seated position, this is kind of like the primary position that a lot of people use. This is like the go-to position that a lot of people will use, either sitting on the floor or sitting in a chair or a bench or something like this. And you might decide to use this quite frequently. You're sitting with a cushion under your rear with your legs lightly crossed, or maybe having your legs off the mat, or you might be in a chair with your feet flat on the floor or crossed at the ankles. But in reality, you can really sit however is comfortable for you. It's not just one way to actually sit. So this is like the primary position that a lot of people will use, with the body upright, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose, keeping the mind attentive and alert during your meditation. But sometimes when you're in the seated position, you might notice you have aches and pains in the body. And if this is the case, that's where the lying position comes in. You can lie on the floor, face up, like if you guys have done yoga, some people call it resting pose or corpse pose or shavasana, I think they call it, where you just lay on the floor face up and your arms out to the side. This will relax all the muscles in the body and allow the body to become completely relaxed as best as possible. But when you're in the seated position and when you're in a lying position, sometimes you might be falling asleep. Right? And this is unfortunate because you need to actively train the mind. The goal isn't to fall asleep, although you could use that if you're having difficulties falling asleep at night. You could use a little bit of meditation to help you with that. But if you're doing an active, dedicated, purposeful training session, you'd like to stay awake. So that's where the standing position comes in. That if you're noticing that you're dozing off, you could stand up. You just stand up in a, straight with your arms either in front of you or to the side or behind you. And this will help the mind be more invigorated and active and attentive. And the walking position is good for that too. If you notice that you're falling asleep or dozing off, you can do the walking position. And I teach this in the various courses that I teach. This Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to be teaching walking position here at the temple. So you're welcome to learn either here at the temple or online. And I've recorded this at different times so you can learn the walking position to help invigorate the mind. The other place where walking meditation comes into hand is that if you're noticing that you have a lot of energy in the mind, like you just feel like you're kind of like go, a little bit antsy, and the last thing you're thinking about doing is being still somewhere, and you kind of need to get that energy out, you could use walking meditation to help you. So by doing some walking meditation, you could do that as a standalone, or you could do it before you do seated. So you could do like walking meditation first and then switch to seated, lying, or standing, or you could do it afterwards, right? It's really up to you. So you can interchange these positions. So if you started your meditation in the seated position and you notice your mind's overactive, you could switch to a walking position because it's really good for an overactive mind. Or say you're in a seated position and you're noticing pain in the body within a few minutes of your meditation, just switch to the lying position. You don't need to strike a pose and stick with it, right? You can change throughout your meditation session. So these 4 positions are used for these various reasons, okay? Any questions on any of these basics about meditation? You guys have anything here, anything online? Okay, it looks like Rachel has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, David and everybody. Apart from meditation, will you suggest us to bring mindfulness into daily activities like walking, cooking, dishwashing, etc.?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Will you suggest us to bring mindfulness into our daily activities, like when we are walking, cooking, or doing dishes?
Yeah, you would like to practice mindfulness all times during your day. What mindfulness is awareness of mind. For those of you guys that haven't learned this with me, and more specifically, it's what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you have awareness of the bodily sensations associated with discontent feelings arising. You have awareness of the feelings in the mind, awareness of the condition of the mind, and mental objects as well. So you like to have awareness of the mind from the moment you're first starting to wake up all day long, and even as you're dozing off at night, you would like to have this awareness of mind. And you're cultivating that wholesome quality in your meditation, but then you're practicing it all day long.
What if I try to focusing on my breathing, just like I do in my meditation when I'm doing these activities? Will say that is useless or that is not practicing single-mindedness?
If you need it from time to time, in order to refocus the mind, you could use it. But the idea of washing dishes and focusing on your breath, this would be trying to do 2 things at one time, and you would like to just focus on one thing at a time. It wouldn't be singleness of mind.
Could you give more explanations on mindfulness into working? So what's the difference between mindfulness and the meditation?
So meditation is that dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're either eliminating certain unwholesome qualities or cultivating wholesome qualities. So it's kind of like taking your mind to the gym. You're kind of exercising the mind. If you went to the gym, you would build up your muscles. And then when your friend says, hey, can you help me move that sofa? then you'd be able to do it. You'd be able to, in daily life, use the qualities from exercising in the gym to actually accomplish some particular goal. So meditation is the same way. You're exercising the mind to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities and cultivate certain wholesome qualities through dedicated training. And then in daily life, you're now practicing those qualities, which I'm going to be talking about here in a moment, about the specific qualities that you're eliminating and cultivating through the meditation that you then practice in your daily life.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's move on to the next thing, which is how to start and conduct your meditation session. One of the things that's important when you're learning about meditation is to understand that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. The body is essentially following along with whatever is going on in the mind. So if you understand that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee, then you can understand that you have to go through the employee in order to get to the boss. So this is why you'd like the body to be comfortable. You're not interested in the body being painful. So if at any time you're noticing pain during your meditation session, you would like to adjust your body positioning, right? Don't just sit there and grin through the pain or breathe through the pain. There's no awards or certificates given out for, breathing through the pain, right? This is something that the Buddha taught us during his lifetime, that for the first 2 years of his journey to enlightenment, he was causing the physical body all kinds of harm. And he realized that this doesn't lead to enlightenment. Sometimes people think by causing physical pain to the body, if your mind can overcome that, you'll somehow get to enlightenment. But this isn't actually true. So you need to be able to have the body where it's comfortable. So you're not interested in the body being painful, but you're also not interested in it being luxurious either. Because if the employee is luxurious, it's kicked back, the employee's relaxed, they're too lazy, they're not going to take you to go see the boss. So you need the body or the employee to be comfortable so that then you can go see the boss and you can train the boss, which is the mind. When you read the teachings of the Buddha about meditation, his original words where he talks about meditation, he will typically talk about setting up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. This is a common thing that he shares. What mindfulness is awareness of mind. And what you would like to do is bring some awareness to the mind before you sit down to actually meditate. If you were to just come in and plop down and start meditating, you're not going to get as much benefit as if you do some things to kind of cultivate some awareness of mind prior to meditation and easing into the meditation. So for me, that's where chanting comes in. When I'm chanting, the mind is becoming more aware of itself. You're becoming aware of the breath and you're easing the mind into meditation. So right away from the very beginning, I'm getting benefit from the meditation. Whereas if you were to just come in and plop down haphazardly into your meditation, you might not be getting benefit until 5, 10, 15 minutes into your meditation because you're trying to gain the composure of the mind. Whereas if you have some activity, whether it's chanting or some people like to do a little stretching or yoga or something like this, or just kind of maybe emptying out the organs by going to the bathroom and bringing some awareness to the mind as you come to wherever it is that you're going to meditate, this will help you to be able to meditate because you're setting up some awareness of mind as you're easing into the meditation. In terms of time, frequency, and schedule of your meditation, you're not going to be able to meditate at exactly the same time every day. It's not possible. So if you were to set a schedule for yourself that I'm going to meditate every day at 8 a.m., you're not going to be able to do that. Things are going to happen where you're not going to be capable of meditating every day at 8 a.m. There are times where I was meditating and I was in my meditation session, maybe 2 or 3 minutes into it, and my son walks in and says, "Dad, I need you to take me to school." And I said, "Oh, really? I thought your mom was going to take you to school." He said, "Yeah, me too. She's gone. I don't know where she's at." And I had to get up. I had to go take him to school, right? And then after I took him to school, I came home and started meditating. So some things are going to happen where you can't meditate at exactly the same time. So if you were craving to meditate at exactly the same time, you're going to notice that you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed when you can't meditate at that time. So when my son came in, I just realized, okay, this is impermanent. No need to be attached to meditation. I'll go take him to school and come home. Right? So if you hear somebody says that you need to meditate every day at 3:30 a.m., this is impossible. And there's nothing that's going on at 3:30 a.m. that makes it any better for you to meditate at that time than any other time during the day. So don't feel like you have to meditate at exactly the same time or at a specific time during the day. What the Buddha did is he meditated 3 times a day. During his lifetime, he didn't have a watch. they haven't been invented yet. So there wasn't even the precise time. So this is how you know that you don't have to meditate at exactly 3:30 every day, because the Buddha didn't do that, and he got to enlightenment, so you can too. He meditated morning, midday, and evening. He says it very clearly in his teachings, morning, midday, and evening. And this is what I suggest for you too, is to have these anchor points where you know that you're going to meditate sometime in the morning and sometime in the evening. And if you can get a midday meditation session in, wonderful. So I know that when I wake up in the morning, somewhere in the morning, I'm going to be meditating. And I know before I go to sleep at night, sometime in the evening, I will meditate in the evening. But if you're going to meditate in the evening, be sure you do it before you get sleepy. Because once the mind's sleepy, you can't have that attentive, alert mind to do that purposeful, dedicated training. So if you normally go to sleep at 10 p.m., for example, you probably would like to be meditating around 9:15 or something like this. Or you can even back it up earlier. It could be 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or something like this. So you're not interested in meditating once the mind's sleepy, because at that point, the mind's not going to be able to be dedicated and active and attentive in your meditation session. So having these anchor points of morning and midday, somewhere around there, and maybe evening, those are the anchor points that you would like to be meditating about 2 to 3 times per day. And then in terms of the duration of your meditation, you would like to be meditating for up to 30 minutes per session. Now, this sounds like a lot, I'm sure, to some of you guys. 2 to 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. You probably have a lot of things going on in your life. And the idea of meditating for 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, that's like an hour, hour and a half of your day that you're going to be meditating. So right now, that might not be where you're at. You might only be able to meditate once or twice a day. You might only be able to meditate for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So wherever you're at, start there and then gradually expand it. If it's a matter of doing one session for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, you'll notice that frequency is more important. So go for the 2 for 15. And once you have the 2 for 15 sorted out, then gradually build up longer and longer sessions. So it might take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to get to the point where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. Because if you look at your life, there's probably certain unbeneficial things that you're currently doing that you could start to clear out of your life. Like if you're spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day on social media or YouTube or things like this, if you start clearing some of that stuff out of your life, you could actually find time to meditate. Doesn't mean you don't ever do those things, but you maybe need to reduce those things to a certain degree to make more space in your life for meditation. And this is something that's going to take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to. You might notice that you have sleepiness during your meditation. If you notice this, that's where you can switch to a different position, like standing or walking, or you could just get some sleep. Because as you're first starting to train your mind is more heavily polluted at that point because you just started on the path to enlightenment. So as you're doing this work and you're applying this effort to meditate, you might notice that the mind is working really hard, and you might notice that you get sleepy sometimes during meditation. And if this is the case, you could just end your meditation session and get some sleep. Sounds like you need some sleep. You haven't been sleeping very well. Or you could just switch positions. You could switch to the standing or the walking position. So these are all options as well. Then you might notice physical sensations during your meditation, like maybe an itch or something like this, where your body feels like, I need to itch that. If you're noticing this, what I would encourage you to do is try not to itch. But of course, it might be so strong that you just need to itch it. And if that's the case, go ahead and do that. But then what you would like to do is you'd like to extend that longer and longer and longer. So if the first time this occurs, it took you 5 seconds before you had to itch, next time maybe make it 8 or 10 or 12 seconds. And then the next time make it longer and longer and longer. And this will help you to be able to not be affected by impermanence, because everything around you is impermanent. But the mind's going to crave this permanent comfort. And you can't have permanent comfort in the body. You're going to experience itches here and there. So as you experience that, try to go as long as possible without itching, because that itch is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And your mind might feel like, I need to itch because I want to be permanently comfortable. But you're not going to be able to experience that as long as you're in this human existence. This body is going to be uncomfortable from time to time, and you can train your mind to not be affected by that, and by staying in your meditation and focusing on the breath. You might notice visual stimulation during the meditation. That as you're in meditation with your eyes closed, you might see different colors, you might see different imagery and things like this. This is completely normal. You might see colors like green or purple or white. You're not a special person. This isn't something that only you experience. You don't have to go out and try to figure out what's this going on. Sometimes people are like, does this mean I'm going to get rich? Or am I going to get my boyfriend or girlfriend back? What does that color mean? Right? No, that's not what that means. I'll explain to you what's happening. Okay. Sight is actually occurring inside the brain. The eye itself is just a lens that's bringing in light, but sight is actually happening inside the brain. So when you close your eyes, you can actually still see certain imagery and certain colors inside because the sight is happening inside the brain. What you're doing in meditation is you're training the mind. The mind is not the brain. There's the brain, which is the physical organ, and then there's the mind, which is non-physical. It's intangible. You can't touch it. You can't point to it because it's not physical. So when you're cleaning up the mind, it's affecting the brain, even though these are two different things. There's a connection between them. So as you're training the mind, there's physical changes that are happening to the brain. Scientists are showing us this, doctors and researchers, because nowadays we have MRIs and CAT scans and other devices that can measure this type of stuff. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they couldn't measure it because they didn't have the technology. So nowadays we can see that the physical structures of the brain are changing in a positive way as an individual is training their mind in meditation. And you might even hear some of this going on. There were times where I was meditating and I could physically hear this changes happening inside the brain. So that's what's causing these different colors and images and things like this to be experienced during meditation, is that the physical structures of the brain are changing. And this is a positive thing. And this happens to anybody who's going to be meditating for a significant period of time through being dedicated and diligent. You'll notice these changes are taking effect. And once you get to a certain point in your training, these changes don't regress. If you train to a certain point and you became complacent and you didn't train any longer, your mind could regress and things could go back to the way that they were. But once you get to a certain point in your training, the physical changes that are happening to the brain and the changes that are happening in the mind won't regress from that point forward. So you'll notice this as you're training the mind. And then in terms of meditation with external stimulus, what I mean by this is like incense or candles or music or some scent or a special blanket or a cushion. Well, you might meditate with these things from time to time, and you might even be meditating with these things now. It's best to get to the point where you don't need these things to meditate. There's only 3 things that you need to meditate. You need the body, the mind, and the breath. Those are only 3 things that you need, and you'll have them with you for the rest of this life. The body, the mind, and the breath. If you can train to meditate with just the body, mind, and breath, that means when you're on a 3-day, 5-day hiking trip in the mountains of Chiang Mai, and you would like to meditate in the middle of the jungle, you can do it because you've got everything with you that you need, the body, the mind, and the breath. But if it's that special candle or that special music or that special phone app that you need in order to meditate, you might not have that with you, right? But if you're walking in a park and it's like, wow, this is a really nice park, I'd like to sit down and meditate. Boom, you can do it because you've got the body, the mind, and the breath with you. So you can shed these things. And if you're currently meditating with these things, it's okay. It's understandable, but I encourage you to shed those things. And you can do this gradually, that you can gradually move away from these things. So if you're used to meditating with music, for example, on a regular, consistent basis, what I would suggest you do is one session do with the music, one session without, one session with it, one session without. And then slowly but surely, one session with it, 2 or 3 without, one session with it, 2 or 3 without. And then expand that even more. One session with it, 4, 5, 6, 7 without it. And slowly but surely, you can move the mind away from this. Because the way that the mind works in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence. It's holding on to things. It's wanting things to be permanent. So when you start making changes and adjustments to your practice like this, the mind typically doesn't like it. So if you can do these small little incremental changes like this, the mind will tend to appreciate that much more. It won't be so painful as you're slowly starting to let these things go. And you're going to need to let it go of a lot of things. So letting go of these external stimulus is part of the journey so that you can just meditate anywhere, anytime with just the body, the mind, and the breath. Okay. So any questions on any of this stuff? Yes, sir. I don't hear you yet. Not yet. If you press the gray button on the front, you'll see the lights come on.
How about now?
There you go.
Perfect. You had mentioned the awareness of mind and having that sense of awareness before sitting down and starting the meditation. My mind goes in a lot of places, and sometimes I think I'm aware, but I'm probably not. My question is there some kind of a check of some sort, before sitting down to kind of, have like a self-check to say, am I actually in a state of awareness of mind? Is there some kind of a mental check?
Yeah, as you're learning the very first meditation that I'm going to teach you guys, which is breathing mindfulness meditation, you'll cultivate mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you'll know what that is because as you're focused on the breath, which is what we did this morning, breathing mindfulness meditation, and the mind moves off the breath, you become aware that the mind is moved off the breath. So more and more as you accumulate the benefits of meditation, you'll be able to see the mind more clearly. You'll be able to understand the thoughts and the feelings, and you'll be able to see what's going on in your own mind. So you'll develop that ability over time. If you haven't been able to develop that yet, maybe you haven't been meditating the way that I'm sharing here with the teachings of the Buddha, of focusing on the breath, and when the mind moves off, you cut that off and let it go. But more and more, you'll be able to develop that quality of mindfulness, and you'll know when you're aware of the thoughts, because otherwise your mind's just having random thoughts without you even really being aware of what's going on in the mind. But when you start having this awareness of the mind, moving to this higher consciousness, you'll be aware of all the thoughts that are going on in your mind. And sometimes when you first get started, it's like a bombardment of thoughts. This is very normal, but at least you know you're practicing mindfulness, that you're aware of what's going on there in the mind. So there isn't like a thing that you will do. It's just that you'll be practicing mindfulness all the time as you're in your day-to-day life, and you'll develop that through the meditation itself.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Leo, you have a question?
Yeah, you talked about trying not to crave the inching while we're meditating, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that?
Not inching?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, while meditating. The same in daily life, I think, right? In daily life, because I realized sometimes here I do this or this. If I realize it, I stop it, right? It's the same.
You can take it into daily life if you like, but I mean, if you need to occasionally itch something, it's okay. But when you're in meditation, what you're doing is you're training your mind to not be affected by impermanence. So when that impermanence arises, which a common thing that arises is this impermanence with itching in the body, during your meditation, I would encourage you to go longer and longer periods of not itching. But in daily life, you might occasionally need to do that, and that's okay. But you can actually get to a point where even in daily life, you don't need to, because as soon as you itch it over here, it's going to move over here, right? And now you got to itch it here, and it almost becomes obsessive. So you're not interested in having the mind be obsessed about these kinds of things.
I don't need to put too much attention about, if I realize it, I stop it.
Yeah, if you realize it, you stop it. Don't allow the mind to be obsessive about anything, including itches. So if you're noticing that in daily life that you're obsessively kind of itching, you would like to train your mind to not do that. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. When I do meditation, and my body will be shake, and I don't mean it, but it happened naturally. So, am I have to control my body, stand, hold, or just let it happen?
This is an involuntary response that as the mind's letting go, you can have this swaying or shaking. This is occasional things. This is why it's so important to have a meditation teacher, because as you're experiencing this, you need to talk with somebody. This is normal. You'll experience this for a period of time. What you would like to do is gain composure of the mind, gain stability of the mind. And as you do that, the body will become more stable. But don't try to force the body into that. Do it through the mind, because the mind is the boss, the body is the employee. So if the mind is overactive, then you might notice that the body can tend to do those kinds of things too. So if you gain composure of the mind, then the body will follow along because of it being the employee. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So the next thing I share with you is these are the words of the Buddha. This is just one part where he's actually talking about the 4 types of meditations. In this book series, there's one particular book that is dedicated to meditation for using the words of the Buddha. It's volume 7 of the book series. But here, I'm just going to show you this particular excerpt of the words of the Buddha, because here's where he's talking about the 4 types of meditation that he taught. And then I'm going to explain them to you and help you understand them. So here, he was talking prior to this. He was talking about these 5 things. He was saying, hey, these are the 5 things that you need to do in order to develop your life practice in order to get to enlightenment. And then he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things that he had just taught, the monk should develop further another 4 things. So the first thing he says, the perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. Sometimes people have really strong sexual cravings, and there's a meditation that you can use in order to eliminate those or even reduce them if that's what you're looking to do. Then there's loving kindness meditation should be developed to abandon ill will. So this is like anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance. Because when you get angry, it's actually coming from your own mind. Sometimes people think that when they're angry, that mom or dad are making you angry, or brothers and sisters are making you angry, or your boss is frustrating you. But what you learn in the teachings of the Buddha, which I've taught previously in this program, is that it's your mind that's causing these feelings. And this is why you can eliminate them. If it was everybody else who was causing you to be angry, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment because it's everyone else that's causing you to be angry. The Buddha wouldn't have been able to get to enlightenment because it's everyone else that's causing him to be angry. But this isn't actually true reality. The true reality is that your mind's causing it itself. And loving kindness meditation is the meditation that transforms the mind or rewires the mind to be more loving and kind. And it takes it away from this anger, hatred, and bitterness and hostility that is oftentimes in the unenlightened mind. Then the third thing here is mindfulness of breathing, or breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts. And this is in meditation. I'm going to explain this meditation to you when we get to it, but you're cutting off thoughts and bringing the mind back to the breath. And there's a reason why we're doing this, and I'll explain to you why. Then he says, the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit I am, which is nibbana, or enlightenment, in this very life. So this is the meditation to realize non-self. And I'm going to explain to you guys what this is when we get to it. But here I'm just showing you the words of the Buddha so you can have confidence that the 4 meditations I'm going to teach you are based in the teachings of the Buddha. Everything that I share is based on the original teachings of the Buddha, and his teachings actually work to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the unwholesome qualities you're working to eliminate and the wholesome qualities that you're producing in the mind as part of exercising the mind with these meditations. So I've ordered these in importance. The Buddha lists breathing mindfulness meditation as the highest priority. In other parts of his teachings, not in the one I just shared with you, but in other parts of his teachings, in terms of meditation, breathing mindfulness meditation is the highest priority because this is helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. This is the cause of all your discontent feelings. Whether you're angry or sad or frustrated or feeling guilty or shameful or fearful, or you're stressed or having anxiety or any of these other feelings, the loneliness and boredom, the shyness, the resentment, it's all being caused by this craving, this desire, this longing, this yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. So when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath. You're training the mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment, you can't let go. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you had when you guys were together. You got really happy and really excited. You felt really good when you were together. But then when you guys separated, you felt lonely. You felt bored. You felt sad. This is because the mind was holding on. You wanted this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, the relationship is impermanent. It wasn't love that was causing you to be sad or feeling lonely or bored. It was your craving, your desire, your attachment. The mind was holding on. It couldn't let go. So this meditation, it isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to train the mind to let go. Let go, let go. So if 20, 30, 50 different times during your meditation, you have to let go and bring your mind back to your breath, this is really good, because now in your exercising the mind in meditation in daily life, when you see something or you experience something that you disagree with, you can let it go, right? But when you can't let it go, that's what's going to cause the mind to be discontent, because you were angry and frustrated perhaps when you broke up with this boyfriend or girlfriend. And eventually you got to the point where you're like, you know what? If she wants to be with somebody else, so be it. Or if he wants to be with someone else, so be it. You let him go. And when you let go, that's when your mind gained its peacefulness and its joy, because you let go. So this meditation isn't to train your mind to eliminate your thoughts. You will have thoughts. In meditation and in daily life, you need those thoughts. That's what's going to help you in life. So the goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to gain this discipline or this control of the mind, that when something's coming up in the mind, you can let it go. But if you're not training in meditation, you won't be able to do that. So when you get to that point where, maybe your animal dies, or your parents die, or you break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or you lose your job or something like this, you'll really struggle during those times, because your mind's holding on, wanting these things to be permanent, when in reality they're not. So you're eliminating this unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. And you're cultivating the wholesome quality of mindfulness and concentration. Mindfulness is awareness of mind. Concentration is to be focused and having clarity, practice singleness of mind, being able to do just one thing at a time. So these are wholesome qualities that you need in order to train in day-to-day life. So if you're training your mind in meditation to develop mindfulness and concentration and to easily let go, now in daily life, you can do the same thing. That in daily life, you can train your mind to be aware when you're having certain unwholesome thoughts. And in daily life, you can cut those off and let those go. So in meditation, with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that's coming up, because you're training your mind to let go. But in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. So say you have a thought that you'd like to take your mom out to lunch. Treat her out to lunch. Practice some generosity with mom. Hey, go forward with that. You don't need to cut that off in daily life. If it came up in meditation, you're training your mind to let go, so you're going to cut that off. But in daily life, if you think about that again, it's like, okay, yeah, let me take mom to lunch perhaps, right? So in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. You feel like you want to punch your boss in the face? Cut that off, let it go. It's going to cause you problems if you choose to do that. It's unwise to do that, right? Or some other thing, right? Maybe you feel like you want to steal something or lie about something. Cut that off, let it go. You realize that that's unwise. It's going to produce unwholesome results. So this is the difference between training versus doing daily life and practicing in daily life. Then you've got this loving kindness meditation. This is to eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will, the lesser versions too, like frustration, agitation, annoyance, hostility, bitterness. Because when you're hostile and bitter in your relationships, you're being unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is only causing harm. Because as you put out the harm in your relationships, where you're bitter, harsh, and hostile towards others, it's just going to come back to you. So whether it's your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, your coworkers, your friends or family, if you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, that's just all going to come back to you. People are going to treat you the same way that you treat them. So if you can transform your mind with this meditation, then you can go out in daily life and be loving and kind. So slowly but surely, you can essentially rewire your mind where you're not experiencing this bitterness and hostility, this aggression. But it's going to take time to gradually wear this away. So in meditation, there's loving kindness meditation, which I'll show you guys here in a moment, that rewires your mind and then allows you to go out into the world and be loving and kind. And the Buddha gives you guidance on this in the Eightfold Path. The core central teaching, he teaches you about right intention, right speech, and right action, and these other teachings to be able to understand how to go out into the world and be more loving and kind. Because as you transform your mind, this is where you'll see a real improvement in your life. And then there's this meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, because sometimes people have extensive sexual cravings. Maybe you have 5 or 10 different boyfriends or girlfriends that you're having sex with. And maybe you realize this is unwise, because this is where sexually transmitted diseases come from. This is where you can get injured and beat up and even murdered. Some people get murdered in these kinds of situations. And maybe you realize you like to come down to just one partner. And if that's the case and you have this really high sexual craving, you can use this meditation to bring that down. Or Or maybe you'd like to get rid of sex altogether in your life, but you still have these cravings in your mind. This is a meditation to be able to help you with that. And the Buddha describes this as cultivating the unattractiveness of the body. Because the reason why we're attracted to having sex with someone is because we see the outer shell. We see the hair, we see the makeup, we see the jewelry, we see the clothes, we smell the perfume or the cologne, and now we're attracted to this body because we do so many things to this body to try to make it look attractive so that someone would be interested potentially in having sex. But when you can see what's called the unattractiveness of the body, which I'm going to show you in a moment, then the mind can see true reality. Because if somebody ripped off the skin of the body and said, okay, you can have sex, you probably wouldn't be interested in doing that. But when we see this outer shell, then the mind is interested because it doesn't see this unattractiveness of the body. So there's a meditation to help you with that. Then there's a meditation to realize non-self. This is something that I taught in earlier classes. There's this pollution of the mind. It's called personal existence view. This is where the mind clings to the body, or it clings to your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So you might have a certain self-image that you want to be perceived in the world a certain way. And now when you spill something on your clothing, you might be embarrassed. If you're in a social situation and you got like spaghetti sauce all over your body, you might be embarrassed, right? Because you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived. And this is because the mind is holding on to this body, thinking this is you. Or say you look in the mirror and you see a mole or a pimple or a wrinkle, or you see a gray hair, or maybe you're losing your hair, or you're getting a little bit of fat here and there. You might be shaken up by this because the mind's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. Or there's a certain self-identity in the mind, like I am Lithuanian, or I am German, or I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am Canadian, or any of these other I am. I am a police officer. I am a lawyer. I am a boyfriend. I am a girlfriend. So around your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, you could have any number of things that the mind is clinging to and holding on to, thinking that this is who you are. And if you hear somebody say something agreeable about these things, maybe they say, all Chinese people are lovely and kind and wonderful and friendly. All Americans, all Argentinians are lovely and kind and friendly. But then it's only a matter of time before you hear something negative and degrading, right? If you're at a restaurant and like 2 tables over, somebody's talking about people from the country where you come from. If you identify with that, like I am American, and now they're talking negative about Americans, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated because you think that's who you are as a person. But the Buddha has this meditation and other teachings to help you let go of that and realize that this isn't who you are, so that now you can reside more peaceful and more joyful, because you can't control what other people say and what other people do. All you can do is control your own mind. So when you uproot this personal existence view out of the mind, where you're not clinging to a self-image and you're not clinging to a self-identity, you can get to the point that even if somebody 2 tables over was disparaging and degrading people from your country, you wouldn't be shaken up by that. You would probably disagree with what they're saying. You know, it's unwise to talk that way about people, but you can't control what those people say. You can only control your own mind. So the Buddha is giving you the tools and the techniques of how to control your own mind so you don't get shaken up like this. So these are the 4 types of meditations, and what you're eliminating as unwholesome qualities and what you're cultivating as wholesome qualities. So here are some more words of the Buddha about breathing mindfulness meditation and meditation in general. This first one here, he says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to tip over. It's easy for you to become angry and frustrated and agitated if you don't have a meditation practice. So the pot is the mind and the stand is the meditation practice. And as you grow and develop your meditation practice, it's making this stand wider and wider and wider. And now it's more and more difficult for your mind to be shaken up. And by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is steady and stable and unshakable. right? And it's a meditation practice that's going to help you to do that. And he kind of summarizes that in this little saying. This is a teaching from the Buddha where he's talking about the importance of breathing mindfulness meditation. He says, monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So here he's saying how important breathing mindfulness meditation is and that it leads to enlightenment. He's not saying you only need breathing mindfulness meditation. He's saying that if you practice breathing mindfulness meditation, it leads to this peaceful mental state of enlightenment. It's kind of like saying this car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. But you need more than just transportation in your life, right? You need food, you need clothing, you need shelter, you need medical care. But this car, it leads to one thing. It leads to transportation. So this meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment. That's the purpose of this meditation, is to get to enlightenment. And then there's other meditations as well. So here he's explaining that this meditation leads to enlightenment. Here, I'm going to just share with you guys about how to do breathing mindfulness meditation. I'll just do it in summary form because we just did it together. This breathing mindfulness meditation, what you're doing is you're focusing on the breath, either the sound coming into the body or the sensation of the air moving over the skin into the nose. You focus the mind on the breath. Then when the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. This is how you actually do it. You're cutting off and letting go of these of any thoughts that are coming up during the meditation. And this is gaining the ability to easily let go. And remember that your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Even when you're enlightened, you will still have thoughts during meditation. But the difference is that in the unenlightened state, you will tend to be bombarded with thoughts. It'll just be like thought. Or you'll have a thought and you'll indulge in that thought for a long period of time. And then finally you'll realize like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. So that's what you usually experience in the unenlightened state. In the enlightened state, you'll have a thought, you'll notice it right away, you'll cut it off, and you'll bring your mind back to the breath. And then there'll be this long period of time where it'll just be quiet. It'll be still. The mind will be stilled internally. And then you'll have another thought. But you'll notice it right away and you'll cut it off and let it go. So there's a stilling of the mind or a quieting of the mind when you get to enlightenment. But you'll still have thoughts, even in meditation, as an enlightened being. But there's a difference. So always keep in mind your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts, but it's to be able to be aware of them sooner and sooner and be able to more easily cut them off and let them go easier and easier as you're noticing them in the mind. So this is breathing mindfulness meditation. You're developing mindfulness and concentration and eliminating craving, desire, attachment. Then there's loving kindness meditation. These are the words of the Buddha here. This is how a Buddha speaks. He speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. Develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is how you eliminate anger from the mind. If you would like to eliminate your anger, you'll need loving kindness meditation. And what you do is you do these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. I teach this at different times where you repeat in your mind, may I be peaceful. And you do this on the out breath. And then you breathe in, may I be safe. And then you breathe in, may I be well. And then you breathe in, may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. And you create these rings. Here I just have 3 rings of I, we, all beings. But in reality, you customize this for yourself with about 6 to 8 different rings. So you might include your parents or your siblings or your boss. You might include people that you have anger for. Right? If you have anger towards anybody, even you're never going to see them ever again in your life, your mind's still got anger. It's not liberated. It's not free. So this meditation is going to help you to free the mind of that anger so that now you can be more loving and kind. When I was growing up, I had a lot of anger towards my mom, a lot of resentfulness. And all my life, I wanted my mom to change. I kept wanting her to change. I wanted her to be a different kind of person. But somewhere in my 20s, I started doing this loving kindness meditation. I realized I needed to change. And then when I changed, I could then be around my mom and I could be more loving and kind. Where in the past, when she was angry and hostile and bitter, I'd be angry, hostile, and bitter. Things changed. That when I improved the condition of my mind, as she was being angry, bitter, and harsh, I wasn't. I just let it lose its energy. I was being loving and kind and warm and gentle in these situations. So now I was able to transform my mind and I was able to transform our relationship. Mom could see that it was her that was being angry and bitter and harsh. But if you're being argumentative and bitter and harsh in your relationships, then all that you're putting out is just all coming back to you. So oftentimes we want other people to change, and we think that that's how we're going to create beneficial results in our life. But in order for you to improve your life, you need to create the change. And this meditation is going to rewire your mind to be loving and kind, not only to others, but even to yourself. Sometimes people have a negative inner dialogue or kind of a degrading way of talking to yourself. But this meditation can transform that. You can get to the point where you don't have that. You have wholesome inner dialogue where you're being kind and gentle and loving and warm to yourself. And this meditation will help you get rid of that negative self-talk inside the mind. So this is the second meditation. These two meditations are needed by everybody who's interested in getting to enlightenment. You need breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These are addressing craving and it's addressing the anger as well. And those are the two important things that you need to address in terms of the path to enlightenment. Then there's another meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. And I'm about to flip the slide here. And there's a picture of a dead corpse laying with their torso cut open. It's a pretty graphic image. So if you're not interested in seeing this, you might not be interested to look at it. But this is how you meditate in order to train your mind to eliminate sexual cravings. So what this is during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would do what's called the 32-part body meditation, where they would envision all the different 32 parts of the body, like the hair, the sinews, the bladder, the heart, the lungs, the gallbladder. They would go through the body and they would visualize it within their own mind. Or they would go to a place where there was a dead corpse and they would look at the dead corpse. But nowadays, that's not always possible, right? Usually governments are very controlling of a dead body because it has disease and illness and it can cause problems in society. So what we do today instead is we have pictures like this, which they didn't have during the lifetime of the Buddha because they didn't have technology. So you can look at a picture like this with your eyes open and you can meditate on this, and it helps you to develop the unattractiveness of the body, where you don't see the body as being something you're interested in having sex with. And the reason why you would do this is because in order to get to enlightenment, you ultimately need to eliminate sexual contact. You might not be in that part of your life right now, and that's okay. You can actually work your way all the way up to the second stage of enlightenment and still be having sexual contact. And in that second stage of enlightenment, you'll be quite peaceful and quite joyful, but you're still going to be agitated around sex. Because if you've ever had the experience where you wanted sex and you couldn't get it, you were agitated, you were annoyed, you were frustrated. So you're not going to be able to get to this permanent mental state of peace and joy as long as there's a craving for sex in the mind. Because there's going to be periods of time where you get it, and there's going to be a period of time where you can't get it, and you'll be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. So by training your mind to eliminate sexual cravings, you can ultimately get to the peace and the joy. But depending on where you are at your life and how old you are, what your age is, and whether you're interested in having a family or not, now might not be the time that you're interested in doing that. So you might go the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years or what have you, still having sexual relationship. But at some point, you're going to see the peacefulness and the joy coming into the mind more and more clearly. And you're going to start appreciating that peace and joy more than this temporary experience of sex. Because sex is enjoyable, right? You know, maybe for a few hours or a few days, you feel quite nice, right? But then eventually that fades away, and it goes away because it's impermanent, because it's a conditioned experience, where by the time you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. So believe it or not, there's actually something in the world that's better than sex. Sometimes it's hard for us to fathom that there is something better than sex, but there is, and it's called enlightenment. So whether you decide to move to the point where your mind eliminates eliminate sexual contact or not, totally up to you. It's your life. It's your practice. You choose to do whatever you'd like to do. But at some point, you're probably going to let go of sexual activity. You're probably not going to be on your deathbed still having sexual contact. You're going to probably let it go at some point. So if you would like to actively let it go, this is a meditation to be able to help you do that. And some people need this. Maybe they have a really high sexual craving and they would like to just reduce it a little bit so that they can kind of temper their sexual cravings a little bit. And some people would like to eliminate it 100%, right? And this is a meditation to be able to help you to do that. Then there's the meditation to realize non-self. This is to help train the mind to let go of holding on to the body or holding on to the mind or anything else that the mind thinks that this is who I am. So you go through these affirmations in the mind where in the mind, you think, I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. I am not the body. I'm not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. And you repeat these over and over and over again. This isn't something I suggest somebody do from the very beginning of their practice, but as you get deeper and deeper into your practice, you ultimately would learn how to do this, and you may need to use this in order to help you to realize non-self. So this is something that I just introduced to you here, but I really teach it to you in other courses and retreats once you actually need it, because early on like this in someone's practice, it would be unwise to just go off and start doing this. But if your practice is more developed and you're experiencing the jhanas, which are 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, in those jhanas, that's when you start using this meditation, because there's 4 stages that the mind goes through before it gets to enlightenment, but there's 4 phases that the mind goes through called jhanas before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And those jhanas are like the light bulb flickering and helping you to understand that you're putting together your practice, and you start noticing these improved qualities of mind. And as you're experiencing those, this meditation is there for you to be able to help you to get into that first stage of enlightenment. Okay? So any questions here on any of these meditations and the various qualities that are being eliminated or cultivated? Anything you guys would like to discuss here? Feel free to ask those questions. No questions? Oh, you have a question? Sure.
Sorry? I'm not exist. What exist?
So the mind thinks that this body or this mind is you and who you are. There is a being here, right? There's a being in existence, but the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. So there is a body, there is a mind, it's come together. We call this a person or a human being, but this isn't who you are. But as soon as you identify with this body is who you are and you cling to it, now the mind wants this to be permanent. So now when things start changing, you'll be frustrated, you'll be annoyed or agitated. So in order to get to the peace and joy, you've got to eliminate the clinging to this as who you are. So then sometimes someone says, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? Right? Who am I? The answer is there's nothing there. This skin isn't you, these clothes aren't you, this hair isn't you, all these bones and fluids and organs, none of this is who you are as a person. But as soon as your mind tries to grab onto something and think this is who you are, that's where then the discontentedness comes in, because as you age or as somebody says something agreeable or disagreeable to you, you'll be shaken up by that. So you can train your mind to let this go, but it takes time to be able to train the mind and wear that away. So there is no I here, there is no you there, but there is a body, there is a mind. But you shouldn't identify with any of this as who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So I'm not quite sure what the question is exactly, but I'd like you to comment on this following thought that I had around if we are disengaging from our thoughts, emotions, sensations, that sort of thing, and focusing on the breath, where do we draw the line between kind of that and perhaps numbing ourselves to just not feeling, to not experiencing life and just disengaging from life? Like, where does that line get drawn?
Sure. So sometimes when people hear us describing the type of meditation and the practice, they think that you're numbing the mind, or they think that you're suppressing your feelings or something like that. And this isn't actually the truth. What's happening is you're eliminating the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings. The causes and conditions, namely here, is craving, desire, attachment, this longing and yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. That if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, it gets excited, it gets elated. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So if you have conditional happiness, that means you can only be happy when these conditions are met. When my mom does this, when my brothers do this, when my boss does this, when my bank account is this, when the weather is this, then I will be happy. And that means you become happy less and less and less and less and less as your expectations grow. So you're wiping all of that out of the mind so that now the mind can brighten up and it can be cheerful, where you can have unconditional happiness, where you're just always happy, not based on any condition, because conditional happiness is temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. But unconditional happiness is permanent. So you're not numbing the mind, you're not suppressing the feelings, you're eliminating the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings so that you can get to the point where you're just having unconditioned peace and joy. And that comes with the training of the mind and uprooting the causes and conditions that are producing it. And now, as you've cleared out your mind can be stable and steady and unshakable. So you can be involved in life and you can have fun and you can enjoy life as an enlightened being, but you're doing that even more so than in the unenlightened state. Because in the unenlightened state, you can only enjoy things when you get what you want. And when you don't get what you want, then you're angry and frustrated and disappointed and things like this. But in the enlightened mental state, no matter what's happening, you can be joyful. Whether you have this thing or that thing, you can always be joyful. So I don't know if this is getting to the heart of your question or if there's more in there that you would like to ask about.
I think if so what I'm getting from this, it almost seems like not necessarily numbing, but to almost be unattached to a certain outcome, and just kind of enjoying the ride, so to speak, and just enjoying what there is with non-attachment.
Okay, so there's two different sides of this, right? So there's like craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's chasing after things, wanting things to be a certain way. And then the other side of that is like indifference, and I don't care what happens, and just going with whatever happens. These are two opposite sides of the spectrum. And what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to come to the middle, where you're making wise decisions to pursue any particular goal, objective, or interest, that you're not chasing after it, informing your inner feelings on whether you get what you want or not, but you're also not dull and lethargic and complacent and doing nothing either. That's the two opposite sides. And that's typically what the unenlightened mind can see. It can see this chasing, or it can see this dull, lethargic condition. And this tends to be where the unenlightened mind exists. But there's this middle way that you can train your mind to do, where when you eliminate these pollutions, you can gradually work towards goals, objectives, and interests, and not form your feelings based on whether you accomplish those things or not. Because sometimes you set a goal, and if you get it, you're happy. But if you don't get it, you're frustrated, or you're disappointed, or you feel miserable. And this is conditional experiences. So you would like to learn how to work towards a goal, and sometimes you'll accomplish it and sometimes you won't. But don't base your inner feelings on whether you accomplish it or not. Where, like you were saying, like you're not looking for any particular outcome. You're not craving and yearning and longing for it, but you are working towards it gradually. And you realize, like, hey, if I fall short of this goal, that's okay. I'll just extend my timeline, put forth a little bit more effort, and then I'll work towards this particular goal, but I'm not going to form my inner feelings based on this thing of whether I get it or not.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Now I do have the question regarding my concern because you talk about the happening, and I mean, in the current society, in the happening, I found that a lot of people, their happening has been built through the capitalism. It means it mean money, like they need a lot of money in order to be happy. And for me, I found it somewhat very sad because it's like now now society, the capitalism has already influenced people in a way, like into how do they think and how do they think about happening, about help, like how do they think about the good thing in their life, rather than to think about what they really have, other than the outside world. And my question is like, how do you think the current modern society, like how like about the problem of capitalism? Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding 100%. Are you asking how to train your mind to get to the peace and joy? Is that what you're asking?
I'm acting like, because we talk about happiness, and it makes me think about the problem of capitalism. Like a lot of people build their happiness because of the capitalism. I think so. Can you understand what I want to say?
I'm not understanding. I'm sorry. Is there someone? Capitalism. Yeah. Okay. So let me answer what I think you might be asking. So in getting to enlightenment, you're learning to not form your feelings on what other people are doing. So if there's people who decide that they're practicing capitalism and they would like to make lots and lots of money, that doesn't mean you need to form your feelings based on what other people are choosing to do. But this is what the unenlightened mind will tend to do, is that you'll see a war in the world and you'll be upset. You'll be frustrated because the mind's craving the world to be a certain way. Or if you see people that are pursuing money or wealth, you might feel a certain way about that. And you can train your mind to not form your inner feelings based on what other people are choosing to do. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't know how to do that. And that's what the training is for. Does that help you? Yeah? Okay. All right. By the way, that mic, I think it has a little bit of feedback. If you wouldn't mind turning it off, we won't get that crackling sound. Okay, so just one last thing to share with you guys to finish this up and wrap this up is that the Buddha teaches, meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. What I share is never give up, right? Because if your mind becomes complacent, you're going to regret it later. When you're laying awake at night and you're ruminating over obsessive thoughts and you're worried about what happened that day or what's going to be happening the next day, you're going to regret having not meditated. This is the only thing you'll ever get from the Buddha, where he's like, okay, guys, come on, like, let's get to enlightenment. He never tries to force you or control you or even convince you to do anything particular, because he's already peaceful. He's already joyful. He doesn't need to force you or control you to do anything. He's just making himself available for anybody who's interested in getting to enlightenment. He shared what it takes to get to enlightenment. So this particular statement where he says, meditate, monks, don't be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. He's just speaking the truth, that when you don't meditate and you're angry and stressed and having anxiety and frustration and all those other discontent feelings like guilt and shame and fear, you'll regret having not meditated. So I encourage you to build up a meditation practice. And as you need help, I'm here to help you. So feel free to reach out for any help that you would like. So I'm going to end class here by just thanking all of you guys for joining, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. Thank you all for joining for today's class and deciding that today is a day that you would like to learn the teachings of the Buddha, because it's the very best thing you could do with your life is to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. You getting to enlightenment is the very best thing that could ever happen for you. And it would be wonderful for the people around you, because you're not causing harm and, you're not being hostile and bitter and harsh with the people around you. And it's wonderful for all of humanity, because the world will become a more peaceful, loving society, a more kind and more gentler place to exist. So if you guys would like to learn more, each Sunday you can learn. Next Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 12, which chapter 12 of our book is titled, Craving is the Problem. What is the solution? So I'm going to be teaching you guys that on next Sunday. And then this Wednesday is our group learning program where we come together and meditate together. And then I will teach a particular topic. This Monday, meaning tomorrow morning, I'm going to be starting a 5-day course, which you guys are welcome to attend the entire 5 days if you like, or even just a portion of it. You're welcome to be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, where I'm going to be starting from the very beginning this course that I teach every month. It's the first full week of every month, where it's called the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment. This is where you're learning all the foundational teachings. And you can learn here at the temple. You can learn online because it's live streamed. And if you can't attend live, then it's recorded and you can find it on our Facebook page. You can also find it in our YouTube channel as well. So thank you all for joining. If there's anything that you would like help with, feel free to let me know. I appreciate you being here and deciding that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee khap. Sawadee khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.